Dave from Aaron, Ryan from McGuanago, basically asking the same thing. Dave saying, Alexander, bummer, not a good way to start the week. Do you think the Packers will be on the search for another QB or roll with the guys they have? And Ryan says, is the cornerback room good enough without Jaire?
So that's two different questions. I think the first one, and I've long held this belief, we talked about it around the draft. The Packers let us know that they weren't concerned about their cornerback room, and at that point, it was likely Jaire was going to be traded or released. At that point of the year, of the offseason, to me, it's the Packers didn't prioritize that position in free agency, aside from Nate Hobbs, who is a guy that can play the hybrid.
I'd argue they did make it a priority, seeing as how they signed two guys, and that was one of the positions they attacked.
Right. So they took care of it then. And I think the Packers at that point determined our cornerback room is good enough. But we've got the guys we want.
What's interesting to me, and maybe because they signed Hobbs, it wasn't really approached, or maybe I wasn't really paying attention enough during Brian Gutekunst's press conferences leading up to the draft, because everybody was going, man, wide receiver, defensive line, these are the areas the Packers really could use some help. And what did we hear Brian Gutekunst? Oh, we're comfortable with those guys. We're comfortable with those guys in both those rooms. And I understand there is an element of Brian Gutekunst selling the bluff there.
Yes.
Because in case Matthew Golden isn't there,
CYA.
He has to, still, like you said, cover his ass. So I don't recall him saying that about the cornerback room, but I also don't know if he was asked about it.
I think a lot of the attention and oxygen went to the Jaire situation.
Yeah.
Because he made it so clear that they were seeking to trade him. He flat out said that. So I don't know if a lot of time got spent on, well, what comes after Jaire or what comes after that decision. So the Packers went through a draft, and was it the 6th or 7th round is when they ended up drafting another corner. They've been telling us all offseason, once they got Nate Hobbs, we're comfortable with what we got here. And I think it's a little more dynamic than people might think, because Xavier McKinney, Evan Williams, and Javon Bullard can all play cornerback positions in spots, and they have throughout their career. So
they'll drop down into the slot, and they'll go into a bigger nickel using their safeties.
Right. It's not like they just basically now have 3 guys there. They have 3 safeties they think are good enough, and from what they're kind of signaling to us, they feel pretty good about some of those young guys they have in the program that were practice squad guys.
Carrington Valentine, obviously, there's somebody that they believe in. Kalen King is a guy that I feel offseason is a name that I continuously see pop up, another 7th-round pick who had potential to be a higher-round pick, ended up sliding in the draft, and has been around for a year because of the practice squad.
Yeah, so they feel comfortable, because you don't release a guy like Jaire unless you feel comfortable at that position. Now, are they good enough is a whole different debate.
I think they are.
I think they are adequate.
Yes. Yeah. Which to me is saying, are they good? Is it one of the premier positions on the roster? It is not. But I know Jeff Hafley played a lot more man-to-man at Boston College.
Yep.
But that could have just been a product of the roster that he had, a product
Style
of the college game being different than the pro game. So, I know when he initially came in, everybody thought, oh, we're going to play more man-to-man, and which would have been great for Jaire Alexander, somebody who was begging to play more man-to-man under the previous defensive scheme. But they played a ton of zone last year. And that's a byproduct of a couple different things.
Yes.
But it also could be a byproduct of Jeff Hafley realizing this is the way we have to play in the NFL, where we can do more read and react. This is how we're going to be able to, cause these turnovers and do things like that. So do I think that they can go man to man? That they're going to go, hey, Keyshawn, you're cornerback 1. We're playing a ton of man this year.
Good luck with Justin Jefferson.
Yeah, you're going to travel with Justin Jefferson. You're traveling with Amon-Ra St. Brown. You're traveling with DJ Moore.
Right.
No, I don't think that's what's going to happen. But I would say that when I watched the Packers in the second half of last year, I don't recall being overly frustrated. You're going to be frustrated from time to time with cornerbacks. It's just the nature of the game.
Missed assignments, stuff like that.
But I don't recall being overly frustrated by that down the stretch when Jaire was not available to the team. So that was with the guys they had last year, adding Nate Hobbs, who is somebody that it was thought of highly by the Raiders and by people who covered the Raiders. Q Myers, who you can hear here on 94.5 ESPN with Joe and Q from noon to 2, Like, he covers the Raiders. He does a Raiders podcast, and he was kind of sad to see Nate Hobbs go when I had an opportunity to talk with him about that. So I think it's a situation where it stings. The room is certainly worse.
Mm-hmm.
If there's an injury or two, things get sketchy, but you can't have 4 or 5 guys in every position that you feel comfortable with. That's just not the nature of the NFL. So I think the cornerback room, while it certainly can be improved, I don't think it's going to be the weakness of the defense.
Yeah, I'm going to put my trust in the guys doing the evaluations of the guys on the team and the guy they acquired via free agency. Would I like more star power? Would I like a prime Jaire Alexander or a Patrick Surtain out there to kind of bolster that? Yes, I would love that, but that's not always the case you find yourself in. And what they built depth. If you remember, there was a Packers cornerback who primarily played the slot, kind of like Nate Hobbs. His name was Casey Hayward. Mm-hmm. And then he went on to be an all-pro. Once he moved around, played in the slot, played outside, played all sorts of positions. And the Packers are making a bet. I believe they want Nate Hobbs to be a multi-purpose tool, much like they view Xavier McKinney, Evan Williams, Javon Bullard. They want him to figure in. They're going to use him on both sides. I do think it was interesting that Matt LaFleur kind of lended credence to, we came into the season believing we're going to play one style of defense, which was more of a man-to-man style. And then as the season went on, we ended up playing more of the zone coverage. Now, that's multifaceted. That's not just simply, well, Jaire's not here, we have to change what we're doing. That's, we're not getting enough pressure with 4 up front, and we have to bring these simulated pressures. We have to bring more blitzes than we probably intended to. So we're going to adjust. And the one thing I believe in Jeff Hafley to do, a guy who's already getting head coaching interviews, is he's going to adjust to the players he has. He's going to put that team in the best situation. That's one thing I believe fully. He's going to evaluate his talent, see how it goes in training camp, and he's going to put the best product on the field that best sort of addresses all of their skills. So you might not have the guy who's going to come in and lock down Justin Jefferson. I don't believe Keyshawn Nixon is that guy, nor do I believe Carrington Valentine's going to be that guy. But what they're going to do is put the best product on the field. And if you have even a slight increase in getting after the quarterback with 4, with those guys up front, you see massive improvement.
I'm not holding my breath.
I'm not holding my breath. And I don't think Jeff Hafley is either. But if they go from where they were last year to even league average, that's a massive,
that's a big jump.
That's
a big jump.
Yes.
In terms of like pass rush win rate. Because if you look at like the pure sack numbers, those get misleading.
Right.
Because they had, we just heard the Tennessee game. I believe they had 7 sacks in that game.
Well, and they had Edgerrin Cooper, who was seemingly a heat-seeking missile out there for them, which I think they want to use him like that, but they prefer to not have to do that.
When you're playing a 4-3 and your best pass rusher is a linebacker, that's not a long-term recipe for success.
It's a great tool to have in your belt.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
Great to have a pass rusher, a guy who can do those things. Mm-hmm. But when he's your best pass rusher, that
big problems.
Yeah, that can lead to some issues. There's 2-time second-team All-Pro cornerback. His time has come to an end with the Green Bay Packers per now Jeremy Fowler reporting it as well. So it's now all over that the Packers are going to be releasing Jaire Alexander today.
Yeah, as much as I'd like to dedicate time to dunking on all the people who thought we and the Packers reporters had some incentive to be anti-Jaire, or as if we wanted him cut, despite I think all of us saying we'd love for Jaire Alexander to be a Packer. I'm going to move past that. The fact it comes now is interesting. Obviously, there was that report also within the Schneidman report that he said he was planning to attend mandatory minicamp, and people read that as a positive. And I think Jason Wilde was one of the first people to say it, and I totally agreed. He wasn't doing that out of the goodness of his heart because he thought things were going to go well. He was trying to force their hand.
Yep.
And what the Packers did is they saw that deadline and met it and said, okay, we weren't able to get this done. We are going to prevent any of the nonsense of the questions that would have to be asked of Jaire's here, why isn't he on the field, where you had with contract, and just moving on from him at their, I mean, this is the last moment, basically.
Yeah, well, it turns out this was the deadline. We had always been wondering, okay, what's that deadline? Oh, they're looking to trade him. Clearly the draft must be the deadline. Draft comes and goes. He's still on the team.
Yep.
Well, maybe they're going to wait for June 1st because after June 1st, you can split that up and you can manipulate the contract, save some money this year. And, okay, June 1st comes and goes. Not the deal. And then today ends up being the day that Jaire Alexander is released by the Green Bay Packers. So he is going to be playing elsewhere. Somebody's going to come. Somebody's going to scoop him up. I would not be shocked if by the end of the week he has a new contract to play elsewhere, just so he can get into the building early.
I wouldn't be surprised if he already has one.
If he's got something lined up.
Because the Packers have allowed him to go out and kind of search for trade opportunities, all that stuff. So I think everyone knows and has known in the NFL that, hey, if you want Jaire, it's kind of open for business, and you just have to wait until the Packers make a decision one way or another. So I would expect him probably to be arriving at like a camp by the end of the week.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Like, potentially,
Right.
because just about everybody this week is doing their mandatory minicamp Tuesday through Thursday. So if he could just get into the building so he could get his hands on a playbook, things of that nature, that's what I'm saying. Like, Wednesday, Thursday, he could be somewhere else.
Yeah. And it's an end of an era. Jaire has been probably one of the more entertaining Packers to watch in recent memory. He was a lightning rod. He performed, as you mentioned, with the All-Pros, with some of the best in the league. At one point, he was the highest-paid cornerback, I believe, in NFL history, and in the league. So for it to come to an end is, we're now left looking at what do the Packers have left, and is it going to be enough to sustain a season with great competition within the division?
So, but Jay asks this question on the Car Blues Talk and text line, 800-990-3776. So when does Alexander sign with Minnesota?
Yeah, that I reacted to this. I've thought this was the inevitable thing that was going to happen once we heard about the trades falling through. I think the contract offer, and we'll probably find out what that looked like, that Matt Schneidman reported about, and it's probably going to be something along the lines of, we offered Jaire basically nothing and told him take it or leave it.
Yeah.
Because if they were truly working towards a reconciliation, they would have been able to find some common ground, because I think it benefits both Jaire and the Packers type of deal. But it's probably going to be the Aaron Jones deal, where it was basically nothing, take veteran minimum. So I tweeted that it was inevitable, and I just hope he doesn't land in the division, because a motivated Jaire is a Jaire I don't want to see on the opponent's sideline or lining up across from Matthew Golden or Romeo Dobbs or Jayden Reed by any means. So part of me thinks there's a real potential he's in the division, and I'm holding out hope that he does not land in the division.
Well, like, if I'm setting odds, like, the favorite's probably Minnesota, because they could use, they're a little like the Packers. Their corners are fine. Their safeties are pretty good. But also, everybody sings the praises of Brian Flores up there, so it wouldn't be shocking if he ended up in a place like that. So